KPop Demon Hunters blends K-pop music with Korean folklore, all presented using modern animation.
This year, it really became a cultural phenomenon.
They knew exactly what they were doing by taking K-pop and covering it in a way that no one had ever covered it. This is Originality 101. Show people something they haven't seen before.
I believe one of the big lessons here in business is like no throne is invincible, just like no brand is too big to fail, right? Sometimes I think it pays to lean into your brand's edge. The lesson is like, always be ready. You don't know what's going to be a hit and what's not going to. And when it does happen, like know how to capitalize on it. And the multiple prongs, the octopus of this behemoth that is K-pop Demon Hunters, I think is what makes it so powerful. You can't plan for the success of one tentacle without thinking at least about the others.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
That. Let's talk about that.
Listen to this. Listen to this.
Memorable?
Well, then be less boring.
Boring?
Remarkable.
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 I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. You're listening to Remarkable. This week, we're talking marketing lessons from K-pop Demon Hunters.
It's time. The world will know you as pop stars. But you will be much more than that.
With the help of our special guest, Fractional Head of Marketing, Ray Lin. Ray, how are you?
I'm doing great, Ian. Thanks so much for having me.
I am thrilled to do this. This is going to be, I'd say it's probably the show of the year, I would say, for many, many, many reasons. So I'm excited to dig into K-pop Demon Hunters and your background and talk about what you're doing with fractional marketing in general. So first, why the heck did you pick K-pop Demon Hunters to talk about today?
Yeah, well, first of all, I know that this podcast is no stranger to Netflix shows. Big fan of both the Love is Blind and Adolescence episodes. K-pop Demon Hunters has just really, I think, defined 2025 in many ways.
They're stealing the souls of our fans? Let's send those disgusting demons back to the depths where they belong!
Yeah!
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 The most viewed Netflix original movie of all time, over 325 million views globally right now, just in its first quarter of streaming, which is crazy. First to top the US box office during its sing-along theatrical run. And then the other side of the music, which I think is like probably the part that most people get even more exposure to. Soundtrack was certified platinum and at one point had 4 songs in the Billboard top 10 charts, over 8.3 billion streams globally. One of the things that I think really makes K-pop Demon Hunters so incredible is how it kind of transcends, what are you a fan of? Like,
Oh, yeah.
First off, I'm actually not a K-pop fan at all. And as a millennial American, I think my reference point for a K-pop is probably similar to most folks, right? Flashback to 2012, Gangnam Style by Psy was released. And since then has been streamed, almost 6 billion times on YouTube. But in the past few years, I think there's definitely been a bit of a tectonic shift there. I live 10 minutes away from MetLife Stadium. It's hosted a Super Bowl, multiple Eras tours, Cowboy Carter tour dates most recently. But the most rabid that I've ever seen a fan base descend on that stadium were the 2 dates in 2023 by the K-pop girl group Blackpink. Like, it was crazy. Port Authority was just not like anything I'd ever seen in my entire life of, living in New York for the past 15 years. So, skip forward to a couple years to present day. And I think that even if you're not a fan of K-pop, if you've seen this movie, that it kind of transcends the genre and into a real phenomenon in our cultural zeitgeist right now.
And I'm excited to dig in way deeper. But first, so, you've had some really cool jobs. Head of B2B marketing at SeatGeek. You've been a senior director at Demand Gen, a handful of times at some cool companies, including WellHub, which which we know very well because we did Murder in HR with Wohub. And I'm just curious, like as a fractional leader, tell us what types of projects you're working on and how you're thinking about marketing right now.
Sure. So like you said, Ian, yeah, most recently I was the head of B2B marketing at SeatGeek for a little under 3 years. Hopefully people know SeatGeek, but if you don't know it, it's a technology company in ticketing with both a resale marketplace and an enterprise primary ticketing platform. So my role was focused on growing the enterprise business through marketing that included demand gen, customer marketing, field marketing, content marketing, product marketing, you name it. I recently closed my chapter at SeatGeek, and as I recharge and explore my next opportunities, I am reopening the doors to the fractional marketing consulting practice that I've had since before SeatGeek. So I provide fractional marketing leadership and project or retainer-based marketing services to companies of all sizes, basically all those functions that I mentioned that I oversaw at SeatGeek. I offer as a fractional marketer and don't really discriminate between industries or types of companies. I've worked with a lot of different ones, and yeah, I'm open to supporting growth at any companies who are interested in my help.
Meredith, what the heck is K-pop Demon Hunters?
So KPop Demon Hunters was created by Maggie Kang, who you probably don't know by name, but you definitely know her work because she was a story artist for DreamWorks for a time. She worked on a ton of projects, Madagascar 3, Puss in Boots, and Trolls and Minions, The Rise of Gru. And she also worked as head of story on the Lego Ninjago movie for Warner Animation and Wish Dragon at Sony Pictures Animation. So she's been at these big animation companies. And she had also been recruited by DreamWorks when she was in only her third year in college. So she's super talented and has done lots of really amazing work. And she had pitched this idea. She had sort of been thinking about it for K-pop Demon Hunters in 2018. So it took a while to get made. And this story blends K-pop music with Korean folklore, namely demonology and shamanic rituals, which I thought was really interesting.
You think we're just gonna let you steal our fans? You're gonna have to fight us for them.
All presented using modern animation. So it's this cool blending of all of these different things, her interests and her background. Maggie Kang said, "I've always wanted to see an animated film set in Korean culture. As a Korean person who was born in Korea but grew up in North America, it's been surreal but also incredible to see our culture just become so cool. It's cheesy, but I think it's true. Growing up, everyone knew Chinese and Japanese culture well, but Koreans were not even on the map. Now that we are, I feel so much pride, and I just wanted to express this pride through a film that celebrated our culture, all aspects of it. So my biggest inspiration for this film is my culture." For making this movie, production was pretty massive for it. Maggie and her co-director Chris Appelhans led over 100 animators at Sony Pictures to create more than 10,000 storyboards. And the fight scenes, I guess, were specifically like quite challenging because there were synchronized dance moves and it's all set to music, so timing is super important.
Hey, this is the men's bathhouse. Get out of here.
And the visual style was inspired by a bunch of other things like anime, Korean dramas, and minhwa art, or traditional Korean folk art. So she's drawing inspiration from all over. And then there's the music, which is a whole other thing. And I guess casting for voice talent was described as pretty brutal by producer Michelle Wong. And so the people that they were casting had to meet 3 criteria. They had to be Korean, bilingual, and good singers. And they kind of prioritize like emotional expression more than like having celebrity singers. Especially for the 3 main characters, Zoe, Rumi, and Mira. And so that's how they sort of prioritized and found the right voices for those characters. And then producing the music was done by Ian Eisenrath, who oversaw basically like 7 main tracks. And this process sounds quite daunting too. There are hundreds of backing vocals, more than 1,000 takes per song, which sounds like a nightmare.
Is that real life? 1,000 takes per song?
Yeah.
It was worth
That
it.
sounds crazy. That's got to be like going for real perfection. It ended up with around 500 vocal tracks. But I think it was really critical to the film's success to really just like get it right. But yeah, 1,000 takes is like, oh gosh, that stings. But
Meredith's like,
curious,
Ian's more of a one take.
we all are. We're all one take people.
Here at Caspian, here at Caspian, we don't do 1,000 takes per song. We do
Yeah.
1,000 takes over the course of 5 years.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
But yeah, I just think it's like it's such a beautiful work of art, really. And I love that it's a blending of so many different things and interests and inspirations.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the thing that jumps out the most, to go start with big picture, is that like this is the first massive IP build. This is like another stratosphere. This is Disney level world building. It's Disney level making it a musical, right? Like this is like the Disney playbook, right? It's like take a world that exists and you know put another world on top of it, and use folklore and all these other things. So I think it's big from that perspective. Like Netflix has been looking for this for a long time. Now, like, why does this matter for us as B2B marketers? Well, it's like stuff takes a while, right? Like this stuff doesn't happen overnight. They've tried other things. They've done animation. Like it just they've not had anything that was like near this success. And I think, um, I think it's like, you know, hindsight is always 2020. But I saw this the first second I saw it. I was like, smash hit. This is gonna be massive. The first second I saw K-pop Demon Hunters, I'm like, this is gonna go so berserk because K-pop is huge. Demon hunting is a great idea. That's a great premise. This is super high concept, so easy to understand. Kids are gonna love it. The visuals are stunning. Like, you know, and there's music in it. Like, you know, whatever. Obviously, there's an alternative world where it's executed extremely poorly, and they're not doing 1,000 takes per song. But I think that like it's so simple and it's so good, and all great. You know, stories probably end up being that way, right? And I think that that's like a really followable blueprint. Like that's like it's the execution is difficult, but like this is what Disney has been doing for 100 years almost at this point. Not quite. I mean, Disney's been around, but with their like large tentpole properties, it's like if you get Frozen and you get the song playing, you make the hit song, it's like you are unstoppable, right? It's like this is why stuff goes on. Why musicals live on for 20, 30 years still performing is because the songs are great, right? And so yeah, I think that like if they make this movie without the songs, like I don't know, what do you think? I mean, 10 times less engagement, maybe something like that. Yeah, it's just like, but they did the whole thing, right? They used the entire playbook, and there you go, biggest hit ever.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, Ian, on the IP front. So for those who aren't familiar, the origin is that Netflix acquired the IP from Sony Pictures Animation, who I know has been on this podcast before. You guys have referenced the Spider-Man Spider-Verse trilogy, which is also them. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs was them. One of my all-time favorites on Netflix, Mitchell and the Machines, was also them. So they've quietly had a lot of great hits. But whoever at Netflix negotiated that deal is definitely going to get a promotion here, because Sony only spent they spent $100 million to produce the film, and based on a pandemic era streaming agreement, they received a flat fee from Netflix rather than a share of the film's massive success. So they're only going to net about 20 million, I believe, from this. And Netflix just reported a 17% Q3 revenue jump, and they've already attributed like a significant part of that to K-pop Demon Hunters. So and they also are just at the tip of the iceberg when it comes to merchandise, other licensing deals. So when it's all said and done, this will at least be a 8-figure windfall to Netflix in the long run. It's crazy.
And you talk about like they did a limited theatrical sing along, which is rare for Netflix to do that. If they put this thing back out in the theaters for a sequel, it will go absolutely bananas. This is going to be $1 billion movie, right?
I mean,
So
Ian,
like,
I'm totally expecting the sequel to be like a Gorillaz style tour of like a fake band that people will pay real money to go see live. But you're totally right.
yeah, it's a smash hit by every stretch, and I think that Netflix now has a million things that they can do with this. And I think that there's a way that B2B companies can do the same thing, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. Ray, what are your B2B takeaways from K-pop Demon Hunters?
Yeah, so I'm going to break my answer into 3 of the bigger songs from the movie. So I'll start with Golden. And the lesson here is, I think, nothing golden can stay. Golden, by the way, I mentioned, is number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 right now, just behind The Fate of Ophelia by Taylor Swift. But we're also getting deep into Grammy and Oscar nomination season, and I know that it's getting submitted for a lot of those. So totally expect it to be on the short list come award season. But I think one of the lessons that come from Golden is working smarter, not harder. So in the movie, when they release this, it is not a planned, thoughtfully scheduled release. Rumi, who's our protagonist, thinks that she can just push relentlessly through her exhaustion and skip the group's 2-week vacation to prematurely launch that new single, Golden, and the subsequent promotional train. It ultimately results in her voice burning out and creates massive friction within the group as a result. I think this is what we do in marketing a lot, is that extra, 10 attempts at ad creative or 10 extra emails that you queue up in your CRM are going to make all the difference, when in reality, it's about quality, not quantity. So I think that's kind of the big lesson there.
Just some additional stats here. Golden has done 622 million views on the YouTube video on alone. Yeah, I mean, I think again, going into the music piece is like, if you're bold enough to make music and you can make obviously something that's great and a hit or whatever, it just goes so crazy. I mean, like, you look at the success of Sing. Like, Sing just took a concept that we all are familiar with, which is a singing competition, and made it into a movie, put a bunch of stars in there, and then had them cover a bunch of songs, and it rips. And like, I listen to those songs all the time because my son loves to listen to them, and that's like an easier version of this, right? That's not even making original songs. So there's a lot of like clearances and different things you got to do there. But just the idea. So, but for Golden, it's like, making original songs, but like having a band, and then that band makes music, and then that music goes on to be successful. Like, again, it's not like rocket science. It's extremely hard to pull off, obviously, but like, they knew exactly what they were doing by taking K-pop and covering it in a way that no one had ever covered it. Like, this is like originality 101. Show people something they haven't seen before, right?
And make it sticky too, right? That's the thing. And I'll get into, like, when I say nothing golden can stay. So one of the lines is, given the throne, I didn't know how to believe. And I believe one of the big lessons here in business is, like, no throne is invincible, just like no brand is too big to fail, right? You don't have to look too much further than MySpace, AOL, or Yahoo to learn that lesson. And later in the song, Mira talks about, she's always been a rebel in her own family, right? Called a problem child because I got too wild, but that's now how I'm getting paid. sometimes I think it pays to lean into your brand's edge. One of the brands I've long admired is MailChimp, and they've always been known for like being quirky, surprising, right? Lean into the weird, playful, and sometimes absurd campaigns, because sometimes that's the stuff that's, going to go viral, right? I think if you think about, podcast ads, I feel like MailChimp is the one that's probably the most synonymous with that. And obviously, it was way worth it for them to really lean into that personality.
Yeah, I love it. All right, number 2.
Don't let competitive obsession poison your well. So in the song Takedown, talks about, seeing your real face, ugly as sin, time to put you in your place because you're rotten within. It's your quintessential pop diss track that they write during the movie and perform, but it's also a point of struggle and disagreement within the group, right? Rumi empathizes with her competition, the boy band Saja Boys, and pleads with her group mates to like dial back the spice level on the lyrics, right? So I think it's like a great reminder that even between B2B brands, we have a lot more in common than we have different. And there's value in considering not tearing others down in order to lift yourselves up. So one example that comes to mind is Slack versus Microsoft Teams, right? Folks probably remember 2016, the misfire they had on the open letter, right? Microsoft launched Teams in 2016. Slack came and published a full page open letter in the New York Times welcoming them to the market, but it was really dripping with condescension. The entire letter was really, really tongue in cheek. And the backfire here was like the tone came off arrogant, not playful. Microsoft's massive enterprise distribution ultimately, really crushed Slack's market share soon after. And, ultimately they got acquired by Salesforce. But, this is where that kind of David versus Goliath narrative ultimately flipped and they appeared threatened, right? And so I think the lesson here is like punching up works until it looks defensive. And, it's best to show your confidence through innovation and customer love, not snarky PR.
Yeah, that's a great lesson. All right, number 3.
Be authentic, flaws and all, I think above all else. So in my opinion, the magnum opus of this film soundtrack is This Is What It Sounds Like. And some of the lyrics are, I broke into a million pieces and I can't go back. But now I'm seeing all the beauty in the broken glass. The scars are part of me, darkness and harmony. My voice without lies, this is what it sounds like. So I really believe that this is about the power of vulnerability and transparency that can really skyrocket a B2B brand. So one example, HubSpot comes to mind, long admired in the space. And I think it's in the early days, it was about, inbound solves everything. They literally named their annual marketing conference Inbound. But I think it also created some unrealistic expectations and some customer frustration. So what they pivoted towards was more authentically acknowledging the limits of inbound and evolving that messaging towards something like grow better, a more grounded and empathetic promise. And ultimately, I think it retained thought leadership, expanded their TAM from SMB to enterprise, and just, helped them evolve past kind of their own original hype towards a place where their maturity and self-awareness really shows.
Yeah, amazing. I love that idea too. There's a great Seth Godin quote, which I paraphrase all the time, where he said basically something to the effect of, my newsletter started getting good when I stopped trying to give people the answers and started trying to just ask the questions. And I feel like that's like what HubSpot very much did. It's like, hey, inbound is like the cure for marketing. And it's like, not really. It's like your particular solution solves one part of it and inbound is part of it, but it can't be the cure for everything. And just, pretending like everything is not the best strategy for a lot of people. You got to actually know everything, which is pretty tough.
100%. Yeah, and I'm actually a huge Seth fan, and I want to give a shout out to my son Milo, who turned 4 yesterday, because I have this Seth Godin action figure that I got at a marketing conference once, and it's literally one of his favorite toys right now. He walks around with this, and he asked me, he's like, "Daddy, who is this?" And I'm like, "He's the marketing man." And he just starts calling him the Markery Man now, and that's like his favorite thing. So shout out to Seth. If you guys aren't familiar, definitely look up his books, his podcast. He's amazing. One of the true OGs in B2B marketing.
Oh yeah, he's the best. His newsletter's amazing.
I got a bonus lesson here, Ian, if you're up for it. I think so. One of the big overarching themes we've talked about is like, in many ways, this came out of nowhere. Like, obviously, Sony Pictures Animation didn't see this, otherwise they wouldn't have just sold it for, cents on the dollar to Netflix. But also, Netflix didn't really think that this was going to blow up in the way it did, right? In the past few weeks, they've actually had to sprint to launch retail partnerships with Mattel and Hasbro for an extensive line of toys, collectibles, games, and more. There was a Wall Street Journal article actually that put a Halloween spotlight on the mad dash that it has set parents on to literally dust off old sewing machines and get creative in crafting K-pop Demon Hunters costumes for their kids in time for Halloween. So I think it's one of those things where the lesson is like, always be ready. You don't know what's going to be a hit and what's not going to. And when it does happen, like, know how to capitalize on it. And the multiple prongs, the octopus of this behemoth that is K-pop Demon Hunters, I think, is that it has all these tentacles, right? In the soundtrack, the film itself, the merch that's about to hit shelves, like all that stuff in aggregate is what makes it so powerful. You can't plan for the success of one tentacle without thinking at least about the others.
Yeah. Yeah, the flywheel, right? The IP flywheel that Disney is so famous for. And it'll be really interesting seeing how like Netflix navigates this as well. Yeah, I mean, my biggest takeaway is to create things that are high concept. So high concept means that it is like crystal clear, like easy to understand. Like Jurassic Park is, a crazy scientist decides to, bring back dinosaurs, figures out a way to bring back dinosaurs and makes a park of them, and they escape. Right? It's like so easy that you tell your spouse on Friday night, "Hey, do you want to watch this?" And I think that K-pop Demon Hunters is like the perfect version of that. It's like, it's just so high concept. From the second you hear it, you know exactly what you're getting. You see the visuals, you know exactly what you're getting. It's going to be a K-pop band and they're going to hunt demons. And like everything else after that is gravy. And if you deliver on that promise, they will be happy. Right. You mentioned in the notes, and you hadn't brought it up, Ray, that like if you contrast this to like Turning Red, that like Turning Red was like nowhere near as successful. And you sort of said like, that's similar tonally, but it's like, it's a completely different attempt at something, and it's not high concept at all. And like the premise of like most Pixar or Disney movies, they're always extremely high concept, right? Like that's the whole point, right? And Turning Red, I think, has a little bit of that, but it's nowhere close to K-pop Demon Hunters. Like it's nowhere close. And for that reason, you can have a lot of the same themes or the same tones, but it's not a propulsive story that, like, without even watching the movie, you say, are they going to get the demons? Whereas Turning Red, you're like, is she going to make up with her mom? Is she going to turn into a panda? Is she going to stay a panda? Like, it's still pretty high concept, but it's like nowhere near as close. And I think that just like that simplicity and that elegance is like so often underinvested in marketing teams, where we want to just shove every single idea into something and just not make something that is page turning, that wants you to just watch the next frame.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that back up, Ian, because I do think this is an example of someone else out Disneying Disney
For
in many
sure.
ways, right? But like, shout out to Domishi and who's the creator of Turning Red. Like, we loved that movie as well. But
Oh, it's great.
it might have been, I think, if Turning Red had been created a couple years later, like K-pop Demon Hunters was, I think they would have approached it differently. I mean, and again, this was nominated for best animated feature at the 2023 Oscars. Didn't win, but was nominated. Right, it was still successful and critically acclaimed, but it was no phenomenon, right? And
No,
so
it's not a
this is like
commercial
the
success.
difference, exactly, difference between a commercial success and something that literally like seeps into our cultural fabric. I think I mentioned earlier the retail partnership with that Netflix started and launched with Hasbro and Mattel. I think that like the closest we've come to something like this was the Barbie movie in 2023, right? Because you had the music part of it that was unmistakable with Billie Eilish and Phineas' song that won the Oscar for Best Original Song for What Was I Made For. You have this movie that blew up and like transcended just like being a toy movie, right? I think a lot of similar themes there. And speaking of Billy, like on paper, like Pixar and Disney should have had a hit, right? They had Billie Eilish and Phineas, two of the best songwriters, musicians on the planet, do the soundtrack. But can anybody sing a song from that now, 2 years later? Like I couldn't, and I watched that movie like a few times. Versus, I was at my daughter's school last week in their library, and their teacher was talking about something about pronunciation of words, and she was like, yeah, and this is what that sounds like. And I just see out of the corner of my eye, my daughter just like has this huge grin, and she goes, no, this is what it sounds like. And all her friends like were jumping into the chorus. Like, that's phenomenon where uttering a single sentence can turn into like a group singing thing and not just be like sentences.
Yeah, I mean, I would compare it more to like Encanto or something like that, where the soundtrack was so big, and or Frozen or whatever. Like those are the classics, and it like, and this is sort of my next takeaway is just like music is so important. Like it's so important, and getting the swings at bat that you do in like one of these Disney movies or like you do in K-pop Demon Hunters, like this is how you get 4-quadrant film. This is how you get everybody to show up. This is how you get everybody to spend their money to go to the theaters, although this isn't, and it will be. This is how you get everybody to bring this with you all the time. I'm curious, do you think this would have been as big of a hit or a smaller hit or bigger hit if it was a TV show and not a film?
It's a good question, Ian, because I feel like these days people are probably asking like, oh, should they have just made it a TV show instead and that way really milk it? I think there's something powerful to be said, and maybe this is what you were hinting at, Ian, of something powerful about concise, really packaging something into, and I'm going to look up the actual runtime here, right? 100 minutes. Wow, so poetic, right? Packaging this into 100 minutes and really just maximizing the hell out of every single minute, that I think has led to it being as popular as it has. And also, like, you're a fellow parent, Ian, like their attention spans are not great. So if you were to have them watch an entire show, I think that's a lot harder than for them to watch, an hour and a half movie and then just like sing the songs every day at school. There's something I think to be said about the consumption of something that's a little bit more bite-sized, because like you said, you could literally consume a single song at a given time, a single scene. Here's actually a fun anecdote is my kids now brush their teeth every day to one of the lyric videos on YouTube every single day. It's
Right.
usually takedown for, you know, breakfast, and then before bedtime, it's usually this is what it sounds like. But you know what I mean? Like literally in the 2 minutes that you're supposed to brush your teeth, that's how they consume it. And I think that's what makes it powerful. Whereas in a longer form TV show structure, I think it might not land as well.
Yeah, I don't know. But I do think that having it be a film is very interesting, because there's something about that sort of like, you know, 100-minute runtime that is, and telling an entire story in one thing and having it be the story that it sticks with you in some way. And I don't know, there's some magic there. And the song is how you sort of like keep it with you, you know, and I think that that's super important. And the clips and, you know, other things and the costumes and all that. For B2B though, I think figuring out how to make music, I think very few companies have done this well. You know, we had ClickUp on a while back where they made, I think they did 1 million streams on their album. I don't know how much, where it's at now, but I think if you were to spend the time and do that, I think that stuff is also really long tail. You know, like I don't know the exact numbers, but Let It Go has done like 880 million plus streams on Spotify. So I mean, like, so just, you know, just the success of, like we talked about, like, just if that was just a song, if they didn't even have the rest of the entire story, you know, that would be a smash hit. And same thing obviously with K-pop, with all their songs. And so, but Let It Go gets listened to every day, right? And like, yeah, people probably watch Frozen every day. People are going to watch K-pop Demon Hunters for the next 20 years because it's evergreen, but they're going to listen to the songs for the rest of their life. And like, and they're probably going to show their kids the movie and all that sort of stuff. So like, that's the value of making this sort of 4-quadrant stuff. In B2B marketing, where, you know, maybe you can't do that, but like maybe you can, like maybe you can tell a kid's story. Maybe it doesn't need to be directly one-to-one to your brand. Maybe you can bring in some artists to do some cool stuff, like, and you can put some money behind it. You know, like with Murder in HR, we made a song in the 2nd season that we just did internally in our team, and it's like super fun and funny. It's really cool and very dumb. And it was so fun to do and fun to create, and it makes the show a lot better. And it just got me thinking, I'm like, we were so scared of like, should we actually make this song or not? And we ended up doing it. It was great. But like, it's not that hard. Like it's hard to make one that, you know, does 800 million streams, but like, it's not that hard to make a song for your team. Like, just try it. You know what I mean? Like, just try something, and maybe try, instead of 1, try 5, and maybe put them in your story. And whether it's a, you know, video series or a movie or whatever, like just try to do it one time and see what happens. And maybe you'll be surprised with what you find.
Yeah, and you know, I think it comes back to like authenticity. So, you know, with the Let It Go example, people associate it with Idina Menzel. You know, she sang it. She was also the voice of Elsa in the movie, but ultimately it was written by, you know, a husband and wife songwriting duo, right? Robert Lopez and Kristen Anderson Lopez. Meredith mentioned this at the beginning, but like, because they were so intentional about casting Korean characters, but also like EJ, Audrey Nuna, and Ray Ami, who's the voice cast, like they wrote these songs. I don't think that that's a coincidence.
For sure.
And like, there's a reason that I don't think it's talked about enough, but I think a lot of the reason that Taylor Swift is so popular is that she writes her own songs.
For sure.
A lot of her peers just, you know, bring in Max Martin to do that for them. And I just don't think that fans are, you know, it doesn't resonate as much, but you can really hear EJ in Golden, and you see it on the screen, and you hear her, you know, I think there's something about that maybe comes back to like omni-channel strategy and B2B marketing, right? It's funny because when you were talking, the word that came to mind was a very old word, multimedia. But it
Totally.
I think it kind of reminds me of this, right? Is like a multimedia approach to a single creative idea or thought and IP.
What it gives you is it gives you outs, right? It's like if you're a poker player or whatever, all the different outs that could happen. It's like any of these songs could be a hit, right? And now multiple of them are, right? Any of the characters could be a huge hit. Like the entire movie could be a huge hit, but there's all sorts of different ways that you could be successful with this. I think my final takeaway, B2B marketing takeaway, is like focusing on a specific culture or section of culture or section of industry that has never had their story told in a particular way. Again, I mentioned this at the top, but like this is so important. And when people are like, are there enough or are there too many podcasts or are there too many like movies or like whatever? I'm like, new cultures are being created every day whose stories have never been told. And definitely never been told at all, let alone never been told in a fun, fantastical, like propulsive way, right? And like this had never been done for K-pop and layered on to this fun, silly, propulsive story. Like, so when you do that and you tell it with an authentic voice of someone who clearly loves K-pop and wants to like respect it and the culture and Korean culture and all this other stuff, you get this love letter to the thing. And that is a recipe that anyone can follow, right? It's like anyone can do that. Go pick a culture and tell their story in a way. I don't mean it like, go just like randomly pick cultures and do that, but meaning not thinking culture more broadly than like race or country or whatever, but like subcultures or subreddits or micro industries or your personas or whatever that thing is, and tell their story in a way that makes them feel seen. And you mentioned earlier about sort of like it matters about the authenticity and the writing, and I totally agree. It doesn't matter when the song comes on at the club, you know what I mean? Like, and you're dancing, you're like, this is a great song, or it just comes on the radio, comes on in the movie. Not many kids go to the club, I think. But it does matter to take a fan from a casual to like a diehard. And like, that is the industry that you're in. You're trying to you want a lot of casual fans. You want people to just like the work for what it is. And you want them, for a certain percentage of those people, to find additional meaning.
By the way, Ian, I think we skipped over this earlier, but since you're talking about fans, like at the end of the day, I think what this movie does a really good job of is translating what we in B2B marketing and the business world think of as customer loyalty, retention, fandom into this fantastical concept, right? They have this protective barrier over the world called the Honmun that I think represents fandom through people being fans of Huntrix, the group in the film. And this idea that as long as you have maintenance of this protective layer, that you're fine, that your brand is fine. And the whole thing with the movie is that, no, someone can come up with a competitive, boy band called the Saja Boys, and they can steal your fans. Nothing is, permanent, right? You have to be on your toes. And I think it just teaches a really important lesson there, but also does it just in a way that, like, I don't think I ever thought of fandom as something that the fate of the world rested on, right? They obviously took their own liberties of making that super fantastical, but I think that's just really powerful when you take concepts of the real world and translate it into something that's beyond.
Ray, wonderful having you on the show. We didn't even get to 10 out of our questions here. For our listeners, check Ray out on LinkedIn. And if you need a fractional head of marketing, any final thoughts, anything to plug?
No, just thank you so much for having me on. This was a total blast. Appreciate you, Meredith, and the rest of the team. Thanks all.